Rick Mardis, episode number 3. How are you today?
Good, very good.
Thank you again for coming on. You always have a lot of great knowledge to pass on to the pigeon fanciers that watch. You're a guest favorite.
Good, I guess.
Last time we talked, you were heading to Belgium, and you went over there. Tell us about that trip, what you did, and what you saw.
Yeah, I went for just 5 days, uh, and I went to a big trade show with Serge Van Elsacker. And basically, I saw Serge most of the time, and then I visited with Andre Roodhoff a couple days. And they're my two closest friends from in Europe. And Serge and I talk weekly. Andre and I about once a month. And so, and after going so many times, I miss not being there sometimes. And
Oh yeah.
so I go. I rented the Airbnb this time. Wonderful location, not a good place,
Okay.
but it was okay. But the bed was up in the attic, kind of in an apartment above their house, and I couldn't stand up where the bed was.
Oh wow.
But the place actually, I don't know why they didn't put it downstairs. It was a really good place. It was only about 4 minutes from Serge's house, 5 minutes from Serge's house. It was the next village over, and and there was a good place to eat right across the street, and a sandwich shop around the corner, so that made it work. And I went to the trade show, and when I go to these trade shows, I get to see a lot of people that I know. I mean, over the years, I've gone so many times. Honestly, I think I've been over 150 times.
Wow.
And started going in '84, and many years I was going 4 times a year, and then got it down. And of course, when COVID hit, that slowed it a little bit. And then I've been going about once a year since then. I'm thinking about going in August. I looked at a ticket today. It was reasonable, less than $1,000 for a summer ticket, which isn't bad.
Wow. That isn't bad.
No, no. So I'm thinking about it. I did buy a few birds, put them down at Steve's house, and they just came out of quarantine. It takes a while, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I bought some record birds from Serge that just feel like I needed to do it.
Yeah.
But I got some nice pigeons. I got 2 ace hens that were ace pigeons, the Antwerp Union, and a cock that bred 4 winners. So, and he always says to me, I don't know how to price them to you. I have a hard time. I said, that's why I buy from you. So,
Yeah,
so
exactly. You can't go wrong with Serge Van Alsacker pigeons, and I'm trying to find it here on the Herbots website because I just read it the other day, and I'm not. Of course, I should have had this pulled up before we started, but Andre had a heck of a season and won some awards, and of course, Serge was also long distance yearlings.
yeah, Andre was young bird champion in Belgium.
Right, that's what I'm looking for here.
Yeah,
I can't seem to find, but
and he and I, there's a funny story there. Is that Andre likes to go to the Canary Islands, and I've been there with him before. And the Canary Islands is off the coast of Africa. It's kind of like their Hawaii,
right.
except it's not as much vegetation. And there's pigeon flyers down there, and they speak Spanish. Canary Islands are part of Spain, and a couple other good Belgian flyers tend to go as soon as the season's over with. That's their break, So they went down there and. And he come in and sat down. They said, well, national champion, you need to buy us a drink. And he was just laughing. Right. And he didn't realize that he actually won national young bird champion.
Oh wow.
He didn't see it. It came out while he was traveling and had saw it. And they harassed him quite a little bit about it. But he's a great flyer. He's like Serge. They're both dedicated, and kind of like me, we get a little over the top, but that's how it is.
Well, he's been doing it at a high level for a long time, right?
A long time. Andre used to be the manager of the National Breeding Station for the Shoemakers for years and years and years, and he retired from that, but he still is an advisor, and he's there a couple days a week for a little bit. And but no, he's very dedicated, and he doesn't keep quite as many birds as Serge. He keeps us probably about 80 youngsters and about 40 old birds.
What part of Belgium's he in?
He's not far from Surge. He's in Antwerp area.
Okay.
He's in Polderbost, which is not far. He's probably 10 miles from Surge.
Got it.
He's not too far from Yellow Rosiers.
Okay.
And they fly in the same club in Bevel.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
fly in the same club. Yeah. And Verkamen flies in that club. And that's probably the hottest club in Belgium right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And but yeah, he's a good flyer, and he's doing okay so far this year. And they're just really getting going. They've had weather issues, and I think you and I understand that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been crazy.
It's been terrible. It's been terrible.
So tell us about the show, the event you went to, what it's called and what it's about, because it's something that if you're obsessed with pigeon racing, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's in Fugari, Belgium. It's in the west part of Flanders, and Fugari is a big convention hall there, and they hold a lot of functions there. And so it's a giant trade show, and that's been going on probably about 12, 13 years. They've had a couple smaller ones, but this kicked off, and way time has passed. It could have been 17 or 18 years, but it's been going on for a while. Mm-hmm. And it used to be the only shows we had, the big shows, were over in Germany. And now there's also an additional show in Holland called the Spring Show that's in March. But anyway, at this trade show, there'll probably be close to 100 stands, which will be offering pigeons, supplies, trailers, clocks, pedigree programs, feed, you name it. Hank the Weird set up there. Herbots are set up there. The Duff magazine is set up there. And it probably draws 15 to 18,000, maybe 20,000 on a day. It runs Saturday and Sunday. And I usually just go Saturday, which is the busiest day, but I go Saturday. And I've been 6, 7, 8 times. And it's usually in January or February. And there's a good show in England. The Blackpool shows are really, right. If somebody wants to go somewhere where they can understand the language a little better, maybe Blackpool. But of course, some of their English is pretty heavy accented.
Absolutely.
One time, my son Steve and I were at Serge's house, and we were flying, and some guys come over from England. And they were talking to Serge 90 miles an hour. Serge turns to Steve and says, "What did they say?" Steve says, "I don't know." He said, "Well, that's your language." He said, "No, that's not my language." It's a heavy roll. And
right.
When you get these guys from Scotland to come down. Whew,
yeah.
You really got to listen. But there used to be you could go to Blackpool and one of the German shows. And then last year, every 2 years, they have an Olympiad. And an Olympiad last year was in Utrecht, Holland. I went to it. And it's about the same. They're all about the same, all about the same people. In England, there'll be a lot more English from England people, distributors and stuff selling. But the big names from Belgium will be there. And I probably see 25 to 50 people I know when I go, and we check in with each other, make sure we're all still here.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's fun. It's fun, and and then usually that's on a Saturday, and every Sunday, the Schilde Club where Van Alsacker flies, and it's the club I flew in when I was flying with him, is about a quarter of a mile from his house. And every Sunday they're open from, about 9 to noon, 1 o'clock. And they're in there playing cards, just talking, telling war stories or pigeon stories, shall we say. And then I go in there and see another 10 or 15 guys that were flying there when I was still flying. And so it's just kind of a nice break.
Yeah,
Kind of.
it's an incredible clubhouse compared to what we have here in the States, especially the way they have it set up. It's a very inviting place with a bar and a little area for or big area for seating, and then the separate room where you can enter your birds and everything. It's pretty awesome. I love that place.
They make the club makes their money off selling drinks
Hmm.
and anywhere from water to beer, even a little wine, I think.
Yeah.
But coffee. And Sunday morning is mainly coffee and back and forth water. And the customary is when you sit down at the table, you buy a round, and if there's 8 people at the table, you you sit there through 8 rounds.
Hmm.
And so, and if they get tired of drinking, they'll order a candy bar,
Yeah, right, right. Yeah,
and they'll stack them up, take them to their grandkids, and that's how the club's funded. Is
exactly.
through that. So it's just kind of part of it.
Yeah,
And but when you're racing in the season, you're there 4 or 5 days a week.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, you know, they fly a lot of races on a weekend, but they don't ship them the same night.
right.
I mean, they'll start shipping. Well, Barcelona shipped on Sunday afternoon for Friday, but they'll start shipping Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Well, they don't ship Fridays anymore. They ship Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. And then one of the issues with in Belgium is trying to coordinate that all the pigeons get to the release point on time. Because
Yeah,
when you got a lot of trucks, and the smaller trucks will meet up with the semi trucks, they'll transfer birds, get them on the right trucks, and they'll go down. And in Barcelona, they actually check every single pigeon, 20,000 pigeons, and they'll put a stamp on the wing, a letter number, and when you clock, you got to call that letter number in. Besides, but they validate that every pigeon's there.
yeah. Yeah, you have to, with that many birds and countries and everything going on, you have to be precise with those results, I would guess.
Yeah, especially when the Barcelona runner sell for 50, $75,000.
Yeah.
They got to make sure he's the winner.
What else did you do in Belgium? So you got some birds from Surge that is going to CBS.
Yep,
Yeah.
just got paired up. They came in. I got them. I met you. Luckily, they got shipped to Tulsa,
Yeah.
and I met you and picked them up. Was it Thursday? Anyway, Wednesday or
Yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah.
And then Steve, I took him to Steve. Yeah, it was Wednesday. I took him to Steve Friday, and he paired him right up. And but I only visited him and Andre because I really only had about 4 days, and I went to the time I stuck one full day to the show and one full day to the club, or half a day at the club, and so I only really visited those two folks. I mean, it was a pretty short trip.
Yeah.
And since I'm not buying much anymore, I don't particularly go out and look for new stock that often. If Steve wants something, then I will. And he did get a few other pigeons, but uh, he's it's his deal now.
Right.
I
Well,
just
you
have
can't,
when he
yeah,
has.
you can't go wrong with Surge Van Alsacer pigeons. I've said this on here multiple times, but I have three from Surge, and all three of them have produced winners, either at a club level or a one loft level or a futurity level. They've all produced good pigeons. They cross out well onto basically any bloodline. They're just superior birds of generations of selection.
Well, he and Andre will fall in the same category. They're
Right.
both very hard selectors. And so if you get a pigeon from Serge or even Andre Rodolph, it's going to be a very nice handling pigeon. And it's going to have a good pedigree of performance behind it.
Right.
And they're extremely hard colors. And sometimes I think Serge is a little too hard. And he and I get in debates on some things. But but he's flying good this year. He won a first provincial already, and
Yes.
he's doing well. But they're having a lot of difficulty getting races in too.
Yeah.
Uh, I think the last 2 weekends they've had to hold them over, and a race, one of the longer cohorts, didn't get released till Monday, till yesterday, and I think it was shipped either Tuesday or Wednesday the week before. So it's 5 days in the basket.
Yeah, and they get fed corn during that time, so they don't put on a lot of weight. That's what somebody's
Well,
telling me.
I think there's been a point where they switched to mixed grains,
They have,
and they just came back to corn. They fed only corn. I think one of the reasons by feeding only corn is it's reduced the amount of people saying, "I want you to feed that. I want you to feed that. I want you to feed that." So, I mean, I want that mixed grain from that company or that grain from that company. So they just said everything's corn,
yeah,
and they have cool enough weather the birds eat it as a rule, you know. And the real difference between our racing and their racing is the amount of time in the basket.
yeah.
That,
We definitely have it better with the transportation. Seems.
yeah, yeah. Well, we usually just got a local club or combine, whereas we're not meeting 50 other clubs.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Much harder logistically speaking.
Yes.
Great. So you're thinking about going back in August to do some more loft visits and see people and all that?
Yeah. One thing about the summer, it's a lot nicer weather
Hmm.
and it stays light forever.
Yeah.
And you can go to since they're shipping 3 4 nights, you can go to different club. If I'm there a week, I can go to 4 or 5 different clubs.
Yeah.
The period I was there, I flew in 4 different clubs, and so I could go. And one of them is collapsed, is folded back into shoulder club actually. But there's still 3 active clubs, and I could go visit. I know people in the clubs, and I could go do that. Maybe go visit a few other people I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, good. Well, that'll be fun. I'd love to go. Maybe next year for me. We'll see. I'm still trying to work that out. Uh, I was there this time last year. I was looking at my phone. You know, your phone pops up memories on your picture,
yeah, right.
and I was seeing all the loft visits, and it's giving me that itch again to go back. Um, for us here, it is middle of June. We just had our last old bird race this past weekend. Very difficult, long distance, 500, 600 miles. But let's go over your old bird season. You all have also wrapped up your season, and I think in the President's Cup currently, which combines young bird stats and old bird stats, you're I think second national right now in the ARPU.
Yeah,
Um, so
yeah.
congrats on
And
that. And
I
let's
think
go.
third middle distance, but this has been a very trying experience because of my fire last year, and I moved
Right.
these. So all I moved was young birds, and I resettled them up here, and but it was in their same loft, and but it still didn't go easy. I still had to catch them down at the old place and trap them, and and it took most of the young bird season to get them straightened out. I only moved 3 miles farther north, and I moved about a half a mile farther to the east, maybe a little more than a half a mile. And the problem I had in young birds, and I could tell, they were lining up with the old loft. We flew out of the north. They were coming to me from the west, so they'd be lined up with the old loft that was further west,
Okay.
and then break down my road, so to speak, and come right on over. So I was losing a half mile at least on them, or longer. They'd loop, and I'm not so sure that several of them didn't go to the other house because there's outbuildings there and stuff that they didn't set on them, and then freshened up, and there was a pond, and got a drink, came back.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got them. I finally got them lined out, and I had a really good season. Our club, let me tell you how we fly first. We fly, we had 13 shippers in a club in Old Birds, and another club of 5 members out of Enid fly with us for 18 shippers. And we should be up over 25 come young birds. But anyway, we fly 3 races from the same release point. We fly an A, B, and a C each race day. And the A is a 5 bird limit. The B is a 10 bird limit. And the C is a 20 bird limit. Then in young birds and probably old birds, now that our membership has grown, and we are growing again, thank goodness, we're flying a lot of sprint races, which is just from the 100-mile station. And we fly 10 weeks total, and we flew a total of 35 races in 10 weeks. So we had five, that would be 30 A, B, and C and 5 sprints. And I won 17
Wow.
of the, and but I had a terrible last race. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah.
And but I I had them coming. They were coming hard, good, both hens and cocks. I was flying 5 hens in the A race and tried to keep the basis of those 5 hens. The first A race of the season, I won the first 5 with 5 on the drop, 3 clocked on the same second, and 2 seconds for the other 2. And I basically 4 of those 5 stayed and made all the races, all 10 weeks. And I did drop 1. I started with 38 pigeons and I ended with 28. And then my cocks went to the B, and I wouldn't always ship 10. I only had 38 pigeons. So sometimes I would ship 7, sometimes I even ship 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I used the C race to find somebody that's coming on to add to the A or B if I needed to replace somebody. But the cocks flew as well as the hens. It was about an equal number. Matter of fact, I wrote it down. Hang on. I won 5A and 5B, 4C, and 3 sprint races.
That's great.
And I was getting usually 2 or 3 on the drop, sometimes 4 on the drop. And I do fly for the national championships.
Right.
For several years, I enjoy it and I try to go after it. And if you know how the scoring works there, if every bird you ship on a race, every bird you ship on the race is counted, so to speak. So they get your total points. If you ship 10 birds, as an example, and the 6 got in the points, they divide it by 10 because you entered 10 to see what the average point per bird was. So it's a lot harder to get, and 5 is the minimum division. They will divide everything by 5. That's why our A race has a 5-bird entry, or it wouldn't be significant. So sometimes I only ship 5 cocks, and I'd ship the others on the sprint. If it looked like a pretty tough week, sometimes I would back off the C race and maybe only ship 8 or 9 and keep 8 or 9 home. And as we got up farther, but we only give awards in the A and B races, and we give a silver eagle coin to the winner of those races. And they're worth about $34, $35 a piece, depending on value of silver. And so, that's a nice, and everybody collects it. We don't give them on the C races. And what's unique about this club right now is we have a lot of people in the city of Oklahoma City that don't keep that many pigeons. And so you'll see as we get to the longer races, and after 2 or 3 weeks of racing, the C race will only have 7 or 8 shippers, and we'll still have 13 on the A and B. And especially as we get out a little farther. So the guys are trying to hold some back to keep them fresh. So that's one reason we don't do it. And there's only a couple of us, 2 or 3 people that will have a full team where they could ship 35 birds every week. Now, in young birds, it's different, but in old birds, that's how it works. What I did, and I'll tell you the procedure I used for the season, I trained them out to 100 miles, to the 100-mile station. And the 100-mile station is only 85 miles for me because we're flying out of the north and I'm on the short end. So when we go south in young birds, which will start, I'll be 120 miles from the 100-mile station. But I took them to that station. They probably, basically, the bulk of my training, I started about 4 weeks before the races, and they were still paired. I bred around the youngsters out of them, paired them up early, and right after our young bird season finished the first week of December, and right after that, I paired the ones, and I didn't do any selection this year because that's all I had was the carryover, and I paired them up, and I bred around, and not all of them had two. There were some singles and some stuff, but I bred around the babies, left them together. Some of the hens were laying back. I gave them dummy eggs, and I trained them for about probably 3.5 weeks together. I broke maybe into two groups, but I trained them together. Now I have my birds loading in the basket. I don't have to handle them. And if there's somebody I got to pull out, I pull out. I have a wax board, a big wax board in front of the pens, and with a permanent marker that I can write down each training toss. If somebody come late, somebody was out 2 days, same thing on the race. I lost the bird, I write its number down, and on that race it was lost. And so that kind of keeps me up with what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and then just before the weekend, before the race, it may have been a Sunday or Monday, I took them to the 100-mile station, and I separated them right after that. And I tried to loft fly them some, but we had such amount of rain and wind and weather this year. It wasn't always easy to loft fly every day.
Yeah. No kidding.
And so it was almost easier for me to train. And so I would train. I had two training tosses, one from 26 miles, one from 42 miles. And I would kind of hit those. I'd turn the hens out first, wait 4 or 5 minutes, turn the cocks out. They come home, trap in. Everybody traps into the nest boxes. The cocks stay with the nest boxes during the season. The hens are pulled out and put in a separate pen. And when they come home, I'd leave them. If they beat me home, then they're there till I got home. But I leave them 5-10 minutes and then separate them. I use a little piece of PVC about 3 foot long, and I can tap on the nest, and they learn after a while to get out the door. The hens know that I'm going to make them go out. And by the second or third race, they're going out and going down the hallway to where they're supposed to go. And of course, I'll get a cock to go down there. I got to go get him and bring him. And you get one of the same two. So that's what I did. My cocks always exercised better than my hens. And part of that is the fact that the hens are out of the boxes. They want back in the boxes. The cocks are in the boxes. So they're not as motivated to go right back in immediately because they know the hens weren't in there. They just came out. Well, the hens are always convinced the cocks are in there. And so I've had to flag them. And it got where it was almost easier to train than it was to exercise.
Yeah.
Because I'm just 2 miles off actually, I get on the freeway about 1, 2, 3 miles, 3.5 miles. And as soon as I get on the freeway, I'm on the north side. We're flying on the north. It turns to 75 miles an hour. So I can get up there and turn them out. And if we get a south wind, which would be a headwind, I can beat them home. Not by much. And a lot of times I didn't beat them home, even with a headwind. And I could beat them home and then give them 5 minutes together, 6 minutes together. I always had my clock on to see who was on time. If anybody didn't want to go in right away, just to keep track of what's happening. And I'd separate them. And I didn't show before the races, because what happened is I have the hallway in front of the pens, and as I run the hens out of there, I'd load the cocks up first in the hallway. They'd go into the crate or 2 crates. And then I'd put the crate for the hens. And when I run them down in front of the woodcock boxes, they're all crazy because they want to get in those boxes, even though the cock's not in there. Sometimes there's a cock or two left because somebody's hurt or somebody just came home. And as we got near the end of the season, I had 2 exceptional hens, and I shut their mates down. because I wanted that mate to be there for them. And so those two cocks were there. So the hens always give me a little more of a hassle to get them in the crates, and but not too bad. I get them all loaded and go. And I here again. So if I was training twice a week, and even some days when I was able to, I went 3 days a week. But I'd go if we had a pretty good headwind. I don't go 25 miles, 26 miles. If we had light winds or a tailwind, I'd go the 45 mile, 42 mile in the 40s, whatever it is. And they knew that when they went in the crate, when they got back, the hen or cock would be there.
Motivation, they knew it was going to
They
be.
figured it out. They totally figured it out, that's the deal. And that's why on some of the races I get my birds, actually the hens in particular, but the cocks too, they'd almost land on the antenna because the antenna is directly in front of the trap, and they'd land on the antenna trying to get in that pen as quick as they could.
Right.
And so it worked extremely well. Towards the end of the season, I was having issues with the hens wanting to pair up, 3 or 4 of them. We end up going a couple weeks long because we had to bump races based on bad weather. We couldn't get a race off, and we even flew a race, I think, on a Monday, and 2 or 3 on a Sunday, and but they flew extremely well. Now and I've told you this on some of our previous visits that my birds practically have feed in front of them all the time. I don't fly any birds to food. I think if you have clean, easy races, you get away with it. If you have a tough, bad races, you're going to pay a price for it. You're going to shorten their capabilities over the course of a season. And so I pretty much have food. Now, what I would do to get them to stimulate them to eat and then go in from time to, and I don't have this trouble in old birds going in, but young birds, I'll add sunflower hearts, and they know that the first one's in is going to get the sunflower hearts, so they come in a little quicker. And in the old birds, as we got to the longer races, I would feed extra sunflower hearts and safflower, try to keep them eating, keep the weight on them. Because I've experienced over a period of time, especially with the cocks, sometimes they'll come off their food and they've been on woodhead a while. They feel good, they feel real good. They're just exercising, they're flying, and they won't eat as much. And I try to encourage them to eat. The one thing is I'm going to fly them every race. Unless they come back late, then they get a weekend off. And but everybody that flew a good race, and I'll print out a report. If I sent 10 pigeons and I'll see I had 6 in 3 minutes or 4 minutes, I'll draw a line. Everything above that line goes back, and everything below that line probably won't go. And they may go to that sprint race. And so they do go somewhere. But so that was the procedure I used on the season.
What about feeding on the day they're going to go into the basket? Is that they're eating all the way up to when you basket, or is there a cutoff time?
No, there's feed in front of them. If there's feed in front of them all the time, then it's not an issue. They don't go. They're not going. They know there's food. They're not going to look unless they're hungry.
Right.
The difference between pigeons that are fed once a day or twice a day is they know that's the only time they're going to get food, and they're going to come down there and get it. And they're going to fill their crop up if you allow them to. Pigeons that have food pretty much in front of them, there's always food. They never fill their crop up. And so it's just the opposite, Jeff. I'm concerned that they're not eating enough. And so a lot of times around noon or 1 o'clock, I'll add sunflower hearts and safflower, so they'll come down and get a good drink of water.
Yeah.
But I don't show, like I say, I don't show the cocks and hens. I don't show them, and I don't need to. I have the same motivation. They understand what's going on, and I have done all this. If there's any idea or anything that I could have tried, I've tried it.
Right. Yeah.
I've tried it. I've tried. If something's going to make them be better, I'm going to try it. And the other thing is, early in this season, I was having hawk issues, Cooper's hawks, and so I had to sit out there with them when they exercise, and then trying to get them in a timely manner. And what I would have to do, if I'm going to let the hens trap in them, I'm loft flying them, I run all the cocks out of the boxes in the hallway and push them over in the hallway in front of the young bird pens so the hens don't see them. So when I keep the trap door shut, and when they see me open it, then they know they can come down and go in. And sometimes I put a flag, sometimes I don't. It just depends how they go. But as it got later in the season, it was easier to train than it was to loft fly. It was less time. It was a lot less time because I could go the 25 or 26 miles into headwind, put 40 minutes on them, and I wouldn't be gone but an hour and a half because speed limit's 75 and I'll run 80, and I'm up and back.
Yeah, then your training's done and you're not having to sit out there that whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did that. And some years I don't. It just depends on the season. But I have found in recent years that that's been beneficial to me.
Yeah.
But I fell off the last race, and I really had my worst race of the year, the last race. And the race before that, I won 2 of the 3 races. Matter of fact, on the B race, I sent 5 cocks, had 4 on the drop, won the first 4. And I sent 11 birds on the C race and had 7 on the drop and won the first 7. And we lost a week. We ended up going 2 weeks. We had so much rain in May, as you're aware of, that I just couldn't even hardly get them out to train or exercise. Then when we flew the last race, it was 400 miles with a strong, pretty good headwind. I say good headwind, 12 to 15. And it was one of the first days of 90 degrees. And I think they weren't acclimated to it. As a matter of fact, I was highly concerned that there was something wrong because they just fell off. And so, but I got them all home. And I sent like 20, I sent 5, and what I sent 10, I sent 20, and I got them all home. So, and I did lose one bird, but it was a bird that had been injured earlier, and I tried to work him back in, and I made a mistake. I shouldn't have said it. But I got everybody else home, and so I was real happy that I got all the good ones home. But I went and took a throat swabs on them right after the race and sent it in, had it looked at, and they were clear, which tells me they weren't acclimated to the heat.
Right, yeah.
And they didn't get enough exercise. That 2-week period, they probably only got it 3 times.
Yeah.
4 times. And I should have probably found a day and ran them 100 miles. Next year, I'll do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I this past weekend we had our 5 and 600, and I don't think I pushed my birds hard enough during the week leading up to it enough to prepare them for the heat and humidity. But there were storms down there and a lot of issues along the course that popped up that we weren't quite aware was going to happen. You know, you look at all the predictions, but you still aren't 100% on that from time to time. So we had a very tough end of the season. My best cock is 1119. He came home in good time, so I was happy with that. Is there a particular pigeon, cock or hen, or maybe one of each that
I had 2 of each.
Stood out to you? Tell us about those birds. And
I had 2 of each.
Yeah.
I had 426 and 409 hens. Here's something interesting before we get right to that point. When I moved up here after the fire, I didn't get the birds turned out until July 16th. I didn't get the loft moved up here. Is that right? It was August 16th. I moved the loft up here July 16th. And I held them in 2 or 3 weeks. Around the 1st of August, I turned them back out. And I had 33 pigeons that were bred off my race team, my old bird race team from the year before, just like I have about 20 this year. or maybe a little less because I didn't have as many birds to breed from. And I'm that 33. I still have 20 of those left. And my four best pigeons came out of them. And two of them, the best, and there's two hens that are spectacular. And there's two cocks that are spectacular. And we have a champion A loft, a champion bird, champion B loft and bird. And then we have an overall champion, which whoever ships the most to sea race is usually in good shape for that. But we have an overall champion bird too, because sometimes birds start on one race, end up getting put on another race, another A or B. But I had the first two A and Bs in each, and the 426 hen, she was in the top 6 of the combine on 8 of 10 races.
Wow, that's incredible.
I had 409 hen, 1, 2, and she was in the top 5 like 6 of the races. And I think that's right. I almost feel like checking on right quick and tell you, so I don't tell you a story because it's awful easy to get screwed up.
Well, your results are really impressive too because of the fact that your pigeons had to relocate and you're flying a team of yearlings. You know, when you're most people already know this, but when you fly old birds in America, at least, you're flying against not only other yearlings, but 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, sometimes even 5-year-olds that have been around the block, have flown all these different distances. Yearlings, you know, you fly out to, I don't know, OKC does it, but here, you know, your yearlings fly out about 300 miles, or your young birds fly out about 300 miles. So when they're yearlings, they haven't seen a 400, 500 yet. So,
No.
you know, it's a new experience for yearlings too. So it's a challenge.
Well, you know, Tom Beard flies in my club, and he and I are always working against each other. He's great competition. And he had a couple really good, let's see, from 22 and 23, 2 and 3-year-olds. He had some really good ones that came on at the end. You could see it, and he won one of the last races, and I had one with a 2 and 3-year-old. And you know, I'm not saying it made a difference, but it does help to have some older birds when you get an unusually tough day.
Yeah.
And but they flew well. My cocks, I had 414 and 431, and 414 and 431 kept bouncing back and forth as my first bird, and they were superstars, both of them, really good pigeons. On one of the other longer races where the birds came in late in the evening, and this was in the middle of May, I didn't clock 431. One clocked at 9:20, and sunset. This was 45 minutes after sunset, and I already shut the loft. I was in and watching TV, and my phone goes off that I got a bird. I had to go turn the lights on and let him in. And he's a beautiful pigeon. His dad was a registered champion, was a real good pigeon. The 426's mother was a really good pigeon. But my 414 cock was out of 2 yearlings that were just okay pigeons. I mean, they were keepers, but they weren't stars. And the 409 is the same way. And I've been in debates with a local guy about some of that. And he just thinks you got to only breed out of the stars. And this is the same debate I have with Serge, is that if you're breeding out of your old bird team that flew young birds and they have the right genetics, they still have maybe the same potential genetically as their sibling who was a better racer.
Exactly.
They maybe not as high in odds of producing as many good ones, but they still have the odds of being able to do that. And I think the key is what I said is they've got to have the right genetic package, and the right genetic package is coming from bloodlines that have produced lots of winners. Lots of winners. And maybe those yearlings of 2-year-olds would have been, but I didn't. After the fire, I took everything 1-year-old and older over to Steve's house, because I knew they raced and I would have harder time trying to resettle them. And I figured young birds was my only shot to get them done, and it was. But so, and at the end of the year, like I say, now I had some of the birds from Steve, and what I normally do is I breed 20, 25 out of my race team and get 40 or so from Steve, maybe 50. I try to get 70, around 70, 75 birds. I have exactly 70 now, young birds. And a couple of my top hens were bred by Steve. I had three really good. My two best hens I bred off the young old bird team. The three next hens Steve bred. I ended up dropping one on a bad day. It's the only bird I lost. Pretty good headwind. I guess she had some. And then, and one of those was my first bird on the last race, and it was like fourth or fifth in the club. And so, but now what I'm going to do, which is a little, I decided to let them pair up. I had exactly 14 cocks and 14 hens left. So I let them pair up. They all laid in a week or less because those hens have been ready to lay.
Did they select each other, or did you select matings?
They select each other. I don't. I'm telling you what. I feel like I'm a good selector, but I don't trust myself because
let them sort it out.
They got to be good to go in there. Now, there's honestly with this group of birds here, I may not keep all the youngsters, but I want them off the 10. I have 10 pretty solid pigeons performers, right. and so I've got 18 that had given a good race or two, did the sprints. I've got a cock I liked that was paired to my best hen, and he only flew a little bit, and I shut him down because that was the 426 hen that was coming in the top every week. So, and they've got eggs. And so I'm going to take a round of late breds, but I don't know. I say a round. I'm going to probably keep a dozen of them. And there's 14 pairs. So if we get there'll probably be 25 youngsters. I'll probably keep half of them, and then take down their Steve. He can sell them. And but they all flew, and there's several in there that won a race here or there. When I got them on the drop, like you win the race, you get 7 together. I won the first 7, and who's the best one? Who knows? Who knows yet? But I know the 10 best ones. So the others, there's some I really do like. It's got good pedigrees, and we'll look at the babies. Maybe I'll keep them. But if I get 20, if I get 25 or so, and I keep a dozen, and then I'm going to try to get 4 birds from those birds I bought from Serge. It just came in, and Steve paired them right up. So hopefully there won't be but 10 days, 2 weeks older than this, and I'll try to take 15 pigeons or so and get them to our sprint races at the end of the season, and then decide if I want to keep them or not. I did this in Denton one year, and I was short on cocks on the young bird team off this. And invariably, if I'm going to go pick my youngsters from Steve, I'll end up picking more hens. I got to be careful. I just end up picking more hens because the cocks would be a little more raw bone when they come out of the nest or something. And so that particular year, I felt like I had like almost 2-to-1 hens. And so I went up to Steve's and got like 12, 15 cocks come out of the nest in the first week or second week of June, settled them and flew them to the sprint races. And I had 3 stars out of those 15. I mean, that flew old birds that were excellent flyers. And so.
You just take your time with those birds. You're not in a hurry.
I'm just going to get the sprint races.
Yeah.
What I'll do is, in young birds, you end up training more than old birds. You train more during the week, so I'll start training we start racing young birds last week September, first week of October. I'll start training. I'll get him get him ready to start training in August. Start flagging them, run through a health program, and let's talk about medications, Savannah. And run them through health program, and then start training about 5-6 weeks out for the races. And then those late hatches, about the time I'm done training those, the lay hatches will be ready to train, because right now the eggs are a week old, so they're going to hatch in 10 days, which will be, what today is, what, the 17th? It'll be the 27th of June, so they'll still hatch the end of June. By the 1st of September, they'll come out and start flying in August. By the 1st of October, I can train them.
And
it'll be cool too. As you
yeah,
know, we have trouble here with the heat getting them to exercise.
right.
And so I'll have them exercise, and as I'm training my other birds, I'll just train those along the way and get them caught up, and then put them on a sprint races. We have no limit on a sprint race. It's available for training, so to speak. And we don't give any awards on a sprint race. It's more, we do have a regular race and figure the results, but it's used as much for training as it is.
You put them on some sprint races late in the young bird season, and then you begin to really let them race come old birds when they're considered yearlings, and can push them out on a little distance. And it's almost like having reinforcements where you're getting birds that are fresh and still figuring it out, and some surprises can definitely come from that. It's big time.
Absolutely. And like I said, I had 3 cocks that flew out to 500 miles down in Denton that were tremendous. And but I only picked them out of the best ones. I mean, so when I went up to Steve's, late birds, the only thing still together were the cherries, and so I picked from those the race winners and stuff, and did that. So I'm going to try to do it now. One of the things I think, and I think we've had these conversations about breeding, is I feel it's important to breed out of younger pigeons. All my breeders up here are yearlings, so I mean, and they're really breeders and my racers. Now, I will not keep all these 28 pigeons probably that I carried over, but I will keep them till the end of young bird season. So if I get a star, if I get somebody super good and the parent maybe wasn't a superstar flyer, I still may go ahead and keep the parents or take them to Steve and put them in a breed law.
Yeah.
So I don't, like my buddy, I don't know if you ever met Willie Van Hecken in Belgium. He's a character.
Oh yeah, I know the name.
But Willie told me once, if you want to have a great season, make all your pigeons orphans. He said, The minute you get rid of the parents, then they start flying really good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I always tell people there's no perfect science behind breeding great pigeons. Serge Van Elsacker would be the first to tell you that one of his main breeders never raced. So you never know when when a bird's going to become an important breeder for you, and so it's by no means has to be a super racer.
I'll even tell you more about that cock. He came to the States. I brought him to the States, and I had to take him.
That's right.
Phantom. His name was Phantom.
Yeah.
And he bred Speedy Gonzalez, who was second national ace pigeon. And Sir says, I really want that bird back. I said, okay. And back in those days, I could just get a health certificate, get a little kennel, put it under my seat, bring it back.
Yeah.
In the early days when I flew in Belgium, I brought over like 70 youngsters at a time. And I'd get a big dog kennel that would hold a German Shepherd, say, and I'd make 3 levels, in the bottom level and 2 other levels, and I could put 20 youngsters to a level and take over 60 youngsters at one time, just pay 1 kennel fee. And I'd get health certificate signed, and I've had them stop me a couple times. One of them stopped me, and I showed him the papers. One time the guy said, he was showing somebody else. He was instructing somebody new. And he says, "Now this, see, this is he did it right. This is how you need to do it." But he said, "Well, but we have plenty of pigeons." I said, "Yeah, and I'm bringing you good ones." So, laugh.
Yeah, I wish it was that simple these days. It takes
Oh, I'm
too
gonna tell you.
long. It takes far too long and too much money to get birds back and
I'll
forth.
tell you a sad story. I brought pigeons in for less than $50 a piece when I started.
Yeah,
And we're paying 500 now.
basically. Yeah.
Right at 500, close to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's rough. I want to ask you about the young birds that you get that are not the late hatches, but your core of the team. Do you pull flights? Do you cut them and pull them, or how do you go about that?
I never cut them. I used to cut them all the time, but it's not necessary. The one thing about me is I check things. I would cut half when I first decided I cut half and half I didn't cut. Okay, so I've always I don't want to think I know something. I want to know something.
Right.
I want to know it because I checked it out. I tested it. And if you just hold the wing, don't hold it below the quill. You don't want to pinch the quill you're pulling out on the 10th flight. Just hold the wing and pull straight out.
Yeah.
They're going to come back in fine.
Yeah.
I was looking at the youngsters today of mine, the early rounds, a lot of them on the 7th flight, some on the 6th. I didn't catch but 5 or 6. And, but I think 2 on the 6th, the other 3 on the 7th. I'm going to excuse me. I'm going to pull their flights, just their 10th flights. Now, it never fails, Jeff. I'll list it when I do it. And there'll be a bird on the 3rd flight, and there'll be a bird on the 9th flight.
Exactly.
So on the 3rd flight, I may pull the 9th and 10th. But if they're on the 3rd flight, they may not get to what I need them to get to. And so, but typically I just pull the 10th flight.
Yeah. Yesterday, my dad was able to come out and we went through. I have 61 young birds on the team, and I would have him hold them, and I would gently get their 10th flight and just go straight out, like you said. And I just did. Usually I do 9 and 10, but this year when I was looking, most of them were on 5th or 6th flight, and I decided just to do 10th. That way, after they've had maybe a week of letting it kind of heal up, I could start loft flying again. And when you do 9 and 10, you kind of have to sit them, or you're risking a hawk being able to catch them easier. And the 10th just kind of lets them continue to loft fly. And so I did the exact same thing this year. I didn't cut them. I pulled just gently straight out. And like you said, if you do it right and you're safe about it, uh, you know,
it's the same. You get the same results. Yeah, and I agree exactly what you said. I want them to keep exercising if I can, keep them. And I'm just, what I usually say after the last old bird race, tomorrow's the first day of young bird season.
exactly.
And so then I start devoting time to the young birds. As I've got older, I've let other things go, but I don't let the pigeons go. I still do what I think I have to do when I have to do it with the pigeons. They keep me motivated. So, like I said, I was looking at them. I usually poll the last week of June, first week around July 4th was the date I would do it. Drop them with drops for insects again. They're clean. I drop them when I put them in when I vaccinate them. And I pox. I know a lot of people don't pox, but I still pox, and I'll pox them and pull flights, and I'll list them. At one time I had like 78 or 79 in there, and I'm down to. I had hawk issues, like I said, trying to settle them. I didn't see where the hawk got one, but he ran them off. They ran them off.
Yeah, I've had the same thing out where I'm at. I'm surrounded by woods, and hawks always get young birds, especially the first week of letting them out. It's always very brutal. And now they're all at the point where they loft fly and they land on the loft and they'll come in, or they'll land on the loft and hang out. But that first week, some of them will land in a tree or go over to a different house, and the hawks just.
Mine are still landing in the tree. I've had to clear up among the trees to set the loft there, and I have one tree that's 7, 8 foot from the loft, and it's a big tall one, and I can't put my hands around it. And I cut some limbs off so they can come in and land, but my youngsters give me fits. My old birds, I break them eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I got a basketball. I got sticks I throw up at them, tennis balls, and they're landing on this 2-story house. I had that issue, but I'm like I say, young bird season just started, so I'm
Yeah.
working on. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get them, and I had 6 droppers that I kept in the young bird pen. I pulled them all out and put them in that hen pen where the hens normally are. And I gave them some nest bows. There's 3 pair. I let them raise some youngsters for somebody, and then I won't put them back in until we're just about to start racing. Because the trouble is, I have a crate that fits in the back of my pickup. I had a guy build it for me that worked for me, welded it up, and it fits exactly in my pickup. And it's got an extender that you can pull out on the tailgate, and I can back right up against the end of my loft, lift it up, and load every bird in there. But with that extender out, it also gives me the ability to run a handful of pigeons in that section, drop a door, and have 2 doors on top. I can grab them one at a time. So got lazy, but it works. It's easier, and they get used to it. And I'll start backing my truck up with that cage in about a month before I'm going to start training. And I'll throw a little feed in the back of the truck. They'll come in there and go. I wanted to go back about any medication I gave during the
Yeah,
open.
let's go back on that. Let's finish on meds. I got to go bump clocks here in just a little bit for our past race, so let's go over meds and we'll wrap it up.
All right. The only thing I truly worry about is mycoplasmosis. And I've said this before. This is the only thing I can't see. And I can't tell they have it. I cannot tell they have mycoplasmosis. I cannot see if they got it. And I was sure they were positive after this last race. I was 100% sure they were positive and they were negative. But I treated. So let me tell you, and I'll do this same about procedure with young birds. We fly 10 weeks again. So what I'll do is about 2 weeks before I start training, I run them through triple vet from the Australian veterinarian. You get it at Siegels, right?
Dr. Colin Walker's triple vet, I think is what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to use Doxy T, and then triple vet's an upgrade from there. It has Swanaville in it besides Doxy and Thailand. And I'll run them through that. There they talk about 12, 14 days. I usually do 10 days, and I'll check them. I'll pay the lab, send a swab down there, and get it charged $20 to know. Then that's probably 8 weeks before the races start, right? In young birds, 6 weeks before the races start in old birds. Then about a week before the races start, so 7 weeks later, I'll run them through a 5-day treatment. During the races, about halfway through, I'll run them through another 5-day treatment. You cannot tell you have it. They're exercised. They can fly these sprint races. We had a 200-mile race 2 weeks before the last race, and I won 2 of the 3 with big drops. And I was the second loft on the other race, the A race. They came as good as they could have came. And the wind was against me. So I beat the wind with 2 of the 3 races and with good drops. And then they hit this last race and came late. And now I know because of that they just weren't acclimated to the heat. And
Right.
But that's the only thing I worry about, basically. And I don't hardly treat for anything else. And everything else, I can see it.
Exactly.
I can see they have this problem. But you can't see you have the problem of mycoplasmosis because it seems not to go into effect till after 2 or 3 hours flying, and they fatigue quicker. And so anyway, that's the number one concern. In young birds, it seems to be a greater concern than old birds. I think it's heat related. I think the hotter it is for us down here, I think it's easier for that to breed, so to speak, to multiply and create an issue.
And for that Dr. Colin Walker's triple vet, I also use it after you told me about that a few years ago. I've been using it, and it's an amazing product you can get from Seagulls, but it's important you use distilled water or it doesn't have its effectiveness.
Yeah, I'm on a well. I've been on a well for several years, off and on, and every most places I've lived. And I thought, well, I don't need distilled water. I'm on a well. And then somebody told me that he was on a well, and when he switched to distilled water, the water didn't turn dark yellow. It stayed the light yellow when you first mix it.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, I learned my lesson. I'm using distilled, and I use distilled water with anything. I also picked up a new drug that Surge is using, and it's for canker. And I tried it. I had treated for canker for years and years and years and years. I thought, well, I'll try it. I don't know if anything happened. It'll probably sit in my refrigerator till it's expired.
Yeah.
Just like everything else,
Right.
I throw away. But we tend to do everything we can do to help those people.
Exactly.
Now, I did vaccinate all the youngsters with the PMV,
Rhoda.
Rhoda, and golly, what's it? And there's a third one now that comes with it. You can get it. It was made by Schroeder, PMV Rotor, and it's one of the other deals. And anyway, excuse me. That's what I do. That
Circovirus. Is it circovirus?
yeah, Circle. It's from Schroeder. It's Rhoda, PMV, and Circle. Thank you. Yeah, that's the trouble of getting old. It's there.
I couldn't think of it either. It took me a while. So.
Well,
Well,
and so Circle virus opens the door. All these viruses open the door to these other problems, which is mainly mycoplasmosis that you can't see. So, and when I flew in Denton, when the lab was there in Dallas, I've said this before, I went to the lab almost weekly for a year, just after every race, and after a treatment to see if it clear it up. That's how I know you can treat with Doxy T for 5 days and clear it if they don't have a heavy dose. The one problem you do, and I'll need to let you go, but one problem you have is we can't tell how heavy the problem they've got. There's no way to tell. And even the lab, they just say positive or negative.
yeah. Yeah, that stuff does knock it out, makes a big difference. I always treat my young birds while they're resting after pulling flights. I hit them with it just to kind of clear them up for when they're going to start loft flying again.
Yeah, that's right. Good. And I think it helps loft fly. And I'm thinking along the same lines right now of hitting it. I had some Doxy T. I thought I might use it up the first go around just so it don't go totally bad on me. But
Rick, thank you so much for coming on again. This has been awesome. We'll have to do it again. I always enjoy having you on. We had our race this past weekend, and we still have to go meet and bump clocks just in about 20 minutes here, so I got to run. But congratulations on a great season. I appreciate you so much for coming on and passing your knowledge on. Everybody really appreciates it, especially me. So
you're welcome, Jeff. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll have you back on soon, Rick. Thanks again.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.